Okay, so welcome everyone today to our LibreTexts virtual training. So we're fortunate to have Delmar Larson join us today, who's the executive director of LibreTexts, to help us. And so we're excited within the Kansas State system. And so I guess I should say, I'm at Kansas State University. I'm involved with the OER steering committee. I was an early adopter of LibreTexts, and so I've worked with it for a while. And so I'm hopeful, you know what I mean, that this is gonna be something that's really gonna move the system forward. And so we're excited to be the first state system that has moved into the LibreNet, which is the LibreText network. And so I'm going to mostly serve as moderator, for the session today. And so I'm going to try to see what's happening in the chat and make sure that that's being somebody that's represented. But I'm going to allow Delmar to take over for now and kind of take us through helping us learn about what they like to refer to as the Libreverse. So please, Delmar, take it away.
Thank you, Brian. Hopefully everyone can hear me without any issues here. I believe I'm allowed to take the screen, which I'm going to do. So now, is the screen projecting? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so it's a pleasure to be here virtually, even though I'm in the corner of my dining room right now. And as Brian mentioned, I'm representing the LibreText in the next 2 hours of conversation and such. So there we go. We throw a lot of URLs out to people, and we're trying to simplify that by giving one single URL that's sort of the map of the Libreverse. The Libreverse is going to be a topic of actually almost everything that we're going to be discussing today. And the Libreverse is an ecosystem of multiple technologies that are meant to co-interact with each other in order to provide added power to faculty and administrators out there, but it can be daunting in order to find out what is in the Libreverse and where to find it, how to access it. So this one URL, or to ask you to ever write down any URL that's associated with the LibreText project, is the primary one that you'd want to write down. So this is the map that gives you all the aspects associated with the Libreverse. So if you, while each component of the Libreverse has multiple each platform has its own unique URL. This is the one that actually ties everything together. And I'll show you that in a moment. So this is a top-level snapshot of that Launchpad, which shows a range of different platforms that are connected to the Libreverse. And the libraries actually extends below the screen, that there are 16 independent libraries. And I'll be talking about that momentarily. But I will also mention that if you didn't write down that URL, you can access the Launchpad anytime you see a little rocket ship. And we have rocket ships all over the place on the Libreverse, so you're always able to pull up this map in order to guide you from one spot to another spot. So let's start with who I am. So I'm a professor of chemistry at the University of California, Davis. I've been here since 2005. My primary research focus is on ultrafast laser spectroscopy. It's a photoactive biological systems. You're probably not here in order to hear me talk about the research, but to talk about, obviously, the LibreText project. I'm the founder and director of the project. It was established in 2008. Then as the ChemWiki, but extended far beyond chemistry in the 16 years since we started. I'm the founder of the UC Davis Aggie Open. I'm an adopter of OER. I'm an adapter of OER. I'm a creator of OER, and I'm a curator of OER, where OER stands for Open Educational Resource, which I'll talk about, or at least pseudo-define momentarily. The key point that I'm emphasizing this is that we both talk the talk and walk the walk when it comes to OER. We're practitioners, we meaning myself and the rest of the team that supports the project. We use these things in our classrooms. In fact, I'm teaching 2 classes right now that are using our project. So we're constantly honing, constantly testing these things out. And that practitioner's perspective pervades lots of our conversations. And there are other perspectives out there in the open community. For example, librarians have a different focus than practitioners or faculty, or vendors have a different focus that's out there. Not saying that they're any poorer than faculty-based focus, but that's our principal aspect. Now, from time to time, I get questions about why we do what we do. And the reason that I do what I do is because of this Denny's restaurant. Uh, and specifically this truck that was parked behind this Denny's restaurant, which is my father's truck. And it's important because for a significant part of my childhood, I lived in the back of this truck or multiple or other trucks that my father owned during the time. And I was essentially homeless living behind Denny's. That caused a very peculiar childhood. But what got me out of that level of poverty was essentially affordable public education. Now, whether that was at the K-12 level, or it was at the community colleges, or it was actually at the four-year school, and even one of my graduate institutions, University of California, Berkeley, was a public funded institution. So it's very dear to my heart in terms of trying to pay back to the community and advance what I think education should be, which is a right for our populace in order to be able to move forward. So that is very dear to my heart, and that guides me at a very fundamental level. So the core value that came from that was reflects my background is that students are not a market to exploit or make a profit off of. It should be clear to say make an obscene profit off of there. There are mechanisms in which students, as other members of the community, may contribute to it, but nonetheless, up until relatively recently, and even many other cases, there are many organizations, many companies that are trying to exploit students, see students as a market, and try to capitalize on the market by making lots of money. And that offends me. It offends me both as an individual that was homeless, but also as a faculty member, as someone who's participating in the chain that's connected to making students pay for these things. I just couldn't justify that as a faculty member. So the result of that frustration and issues is the LibreTexts project. So I'd like to define what the LibreTexts project is in its nutshell. We're implementing a community-built platform for the construction, curation, adoption, and adaption of open educational resources, OER, that is comprehensive and can be curated at multiple levels. So each of those words that are bolded, the three C's, are particularly definitive in terms of how we advance our project. Each of the four words that are in the parentheses it extends to the mechanisms of how we actually implement them and the scope of what we are doing. In other words, we consider construction and curation, adoption and adaption four facets necessary in order to advance open educational resources and the benefits that they come up to. So when I say community, that basically means anybody and everybody that has an interest in order to contribute to our project, whether it happens to be students, faculty, external experts that can contribute, we accept with open arms. Open educational resources can be defined in a variety of different ways. For the sake of this conversation, I'm going to say it's openly available material for students in order to access, that's without a barrier, and material that instructors have the ability to edit and curate in order to be able to suit their individual needs. In other words, customization. There are other definitions or other facets associated with OER, but that's beyond the point of this conversation. If you guys have an interest in that, we can certainly go over it in more detail later on in this discussion. Comprehensive. So while all the faculty in this meeting would agree that chemistry is the best field that anyone should study, uh, but while the LibreTexts project was born out of chemistry, it's expanded in order to cover a wide range of different topics. In fact, our interest is in anything academic, both horizontally and vertically. Horizontal meaning multiple fields that are out there, even the ones that are not chemistry related, and vertically meaning we actually have an interest in K-12 space all the way up to graduate level space. There are lots of holes or gaps in terms of being able to generate material to handle everything there, but we're very excited in order to be able to pursue that and such. So we follow no gap left behind policy. We also follow no tech left behind policy, which means that as what we have implemented is very much connected to technology and facilitating those construction, curation, adaption aspects using technology, which is what the LibreVerse is the manifestation of there. We follow a no tech left behind policy. So as open technology or open source technology becomes available, we'll take it, integrate it into our platform, and let the faculty and the students that use the LibreVerse capitalize on this material. In other words, we're removing the barrier for implementation of emerging open source technologies to faculty so they can actually advance and build what is sometimes referred to as the textbooks of the future. Lastly, is the aspect of curated. It basically means that the core content that we have in the LibreVerse is dynamic. Anyone in academia understands the essence that there is that you need to constantly be updating material, whether it has to do with correcting incorrect aspects, customizing aspects, or just basically changing the typesetting of various materials. We need an ability in order to curate. Now, an example of something that wouldn't be able to be curated would be a pile of PDFs. And PDFs are not an easily curated infrastructure or format. It's more of a terminal technology. We've implemented a technology based around wikis in order to host the core textbook material. And we chose wikis because it was the best technology for large-scale collaborative construction efforts. Again, dovetailing back to the community-based effort. It was the best technology when we started in 2008. It's still the best technology in order to be able to advance that approach. And that's what I'm going to be introducing to you today. So why OER? So there are various benefits associated with OER. I don't want to go into all of them, but I just want to emphasize two key aspects. One for the students, which is essentially open educational resources provides a mechanism to rebalance equity gaps, to fill in issues associated with different populations having different capabilities in order to advance through a wide variety of reasons, whether it's due to money, like in my case as a child, or it's due to racial issues, or due to location, or due to a handful of other aspects that essentially hinder certain populations' progress. Open educational resources are able to address that because they essentially remove the barrier in order to access the material. So it's no longer a financial firewall in order to be able to tap into that stuff. That provides plenty of opportunities or benefits for students than just being able to fill in the gaps. It also frees up funds that could be oftentimes better spent. Many of our students are both housing insecure, like how I was with living in the back of the truck, or food insecure, which I also had when I was living in the back of the truck, or other mechanisms or other issues that they need to address. For example, a local community college instructor mentioned to me a handful of years ago when she had adopted the LibreText for her nutrition book that a student came to her class crying. That student essentially had to express that before she had adopted this nutrition book, that she had to make a decision in order to get food for her newborn baby or pay for the textbook. Now, that's an atrocious situation in order to address, and it's an obvious answer that the baby should come first, but we provide a mechanism in order to address both of them, and that is a guiding principle behind how and why we operate here. Second, which I'm going to be discussing in a moment, is that OER provides the opportunity to customize resources in order to better engage the students. So the more engaged the students are with the material, the more likely they are to learn from the material. And that essentially is folded into customization. So if you make a resource, you make a textbook that resonates to an identity of the student, whether that happens to be cultural identity or location identity. For example, if you were to make a book dealing with pollution, and that pollution involved pollution in Kansas, Kansas students have a greater interest in order to read that part of the textbook than students in California. Because the location is not there, it doesn't address the engagement aspect. The detraction of that is that means that every single population that you want to build and customize a book has to be well tuned for that specific population. But again, OER provides that opportunity. So for the faculty, what we're essentially doing is we're breaking the golden handcuffs that publishers provide. Publishers come in and they understand business very well, and they understand how things operate, and they understand that their market has been shifting from selling textbooks to selling ancillary materials, getting faculty in order to use the book, and then charging a lot of money for students in order to use a homework platform, or having access to other ancillary materials essentially generates a golden handcuff sort of situation. And the scope that we have, instead of targeting on a very specific part of OER, we want to target the full gamut of what commercial publishers provide to campuses. Because until you have that integrated and fully broken up, fully built up, you're going to be unable in order to break these golden handcuffs that are out there. Again, that's a big task. There are many people in the open community that are pursuing this. Unfortunately, we benefit from the open aspect of there. So let me address a few things that might be a little bit confusing to you, which is quite common out there. We're very Libra happy. We like the word Libra in a variety of spots. So I just wanted to define a few of them just to make sure that we have the same platform for communication. One is LibreTexts is the brand name that is of the entire effort. Our project, the team, is the LibreText organization. The LibreVerse, which is what I'm going to be jumping into in just a second, is this practical manifestation of our effort. It's the interconnected ecosystem of these technologies that promotes open forward learning to be able to facilitate multiple facets of what students need. The LibreNet is the consortium that campuses, systems, states can join for maximal use of the LibreVerse, which KBOR signed in, and there are about a half a dozen Kansas faculty that are already ready to rock in terms of using the LibreNet. And the last thing is that we show Libre in a variety of different parts in order to designate central technologies. We're working on ways of extricating that, but you may come across those names at different points. For example, Libre Commons we used to use instead of a specific type of commons example. That'll be is one of the technologies. The LibreVerse, Libre Studio is another technology, is the LibreVerse that we are downgrading. So don't be surprised if you see the word Libre in a variety of different aspects. My team ultimately did an intervention with me when I was discussing trying to rename our learning analytics infrastructure to LibreNetics. And at that point, they had to sit me down and say, I'm going a little too crazy. The LibreText project, like I mentioned, is 16 years old. These are old statistics because Google Analytics has changed this infrastructure. But the issue that that I want to point out here is that we have a very large corpus of content, and that corpus of content is used quite ubiquitously. In fact, we have the largest central corpus of OER content out there at about 900,000 pages. Distributed over 2,500 books plus another handful of thousands non-affiliated content. We deliver somewhere in the order of at the peak of the week 900,000 page views per day. And we've distributed accumulated 1.2 billion page views. The point of this is that we're not only the biggest repository of OER content, we're also the most popular in terms of usage that's out there. And that's what you guys have available for. And anybody in the world has access to our material because that is what Open provides. So what is the LibreVerse? So the LibreVerse, I mentioned, was a variety of different technologies interconnected in order to address the needs of Open, but you can look at it from three basic facets. One is as a construction platform of OER, whether that happens to be textbooks or homework assessments or interactives or other facets that you want to bring into your infrastructure. It's used as a dissemination platform. Like I mentioned before, it's the most popular dissemination platform of OER on the internet today. But it's also used as a learning platform. Students are using it, so that provides a mechanism in order to optimize the platform to enhance the learning, provide analytics to faculty in order to guide pedagogies, and essentially provide a better mechanism for using OER rather than just giving someone, here's a book, it's OER, be free. And the reason that we have that aspect is because we are in academia. We have an interest in order to be able to pursue what we're doing. The end goal is not just basically, here's a book, and that's the end game. So the LibreVerse can be diagrammed out in this little structure here. It has the core libraries, which are 16 interconnected libraries, and then it has these ancillary technologies in order to decorate the libraries to provide additional benefits to the students and faculty than just the textbook itself. That includes homework, that includes Jupyter Notebook System, analytics, Commons Conductor, and I'll talk about these things in turn. So let's start with the libraries. So the first thing we're to recognize is what prompted the development of our libraries. And the issue that we have here is actually, the slide is 6 years old. We haven't changed it since, and it's more applicable now than it was when we started 6 years. And that is that the OER universe is fragmented. You can find OER in a wide variety of places. You could find links to OER in the Open Textbook Library, which is more of a library guide than a library. OER Commons, which is also similarly referred to. Um, OpenStax, which will host content, but not allow customization. Merlot, where you can find content. OpenSUNY, Galileo, Open Oregon, NOVA, BC Campus, eCampus Ontario, Alberta, Hawaii, Saylor, California State University System, Oregon State University, and numerous other places, including many faculty that would have content on their personal or office computers that would constitute OER. That results in a difficulty in order to find content, although there have been developments in search capabilities over the last half a decade for doing so. But the bigger issue for me is it also provides a limitation in terms of advancing the development of OER. So if you have multiple copies of books, and let's say you have 10 books and you have 10 different campuses, and each campus has improved that book in one way or another because that's what OER provides. If you have no mechanism for them to talk to each other, you have no mechanism for all those benefits in order to come back together again. It's a distinct limitation associated with this fragmented approaches out there. In other words, we come up with a situation where you have 2 steps forward and then 1 step back because we're not in lockstep in order to be able to advance off of here. There are 2 approaches in order to be able to handle this. One is to generate a federated system where everybody talks to each other with the same format and is able to move forward and benefit from it. However, that will never happen for a wide variety of reasons, in part because it's similar to herding cats in order to be able to do that. The other approach, which is the approach that we did, was to essentially take the OER, capitalize on the O in OER, which means freely shareable, and integrate it into a single infrastructure. So in other words, by doing so, we provide a better, bigger bucket of Legos for faculty to come in order to build their resources using existing up-to-date content across our network. Once you've actually done that, by centralizing the content, by standardizing the content, by making it interconvertible or easily interconvertible, you can build collections, aka books, off of there. It provides maximal flexibility and it provides maximal curatability. So when you update content on one page, everyone can benefit from it, or at least know when that content is available in order to be able to compare and decide if they want to advance that. Yeah. So this is tantamount to saying, if you want to come in and you want to remix, which is the term that we use in order to take content and build a new book, or in this case here, remix different parts of the Lego blocks in order to build your new Millennium Falcon out there. If content's in different formats, it makes it difficult. If you have a bunch of Duplos with a bunch of Legos, with a bunch of Lincoln Logs, with a bunch of Erector sets, it's difficult in order to put these things together. And that's what we have right now in the open community. Is no standardized way in order to do so. And our approach is just to bring it together and standardize it internally. And you make that corpus big enough such that faculty are only limited by their imagination, not by the actual raw material that they have. It'll be a while before we get to that level. So we brought the stuff in. We have about 650,000 pages of English OER content. We have another 250,000 pages of content in other languages, specifically Spanish and Ukrainian, although we have a medley of content in other languages too. That's part of our global scope because there are many people in the world that are not native English speakers, but have the need for the same benefits of OER like I did when I was a kid. So, so in order to be able to facilitate this large corpus of content, in order to be able to facilitate remixing specifically that content, we built a tool called the Remixer. The Remixer is a very simple drag and drop tool that I'll show you later on this afternoon, where you can go through the library and pick and identify content and then just basically drag it over. So you can customize your own book relatively quickly. At least at the page level. You can curate, you can build this together. It has auto attributions, it has auto titling and a few other things in order to be able to make it so that the barrier to remixing is as low as possible. Because when you want that barrier to be as low as possible in order to get faculty engaged in terms of this process, because if it's a painful process, it's a difficult, OER is difficult to sell to faculty. Yeah. So each of our libraries is organized in 3 general categories. we have content or books that are stored in our central bookshelves, or sometimes just referred to as bookshelves. We have content that's stored in campus bookshelves, and we have content that's stored in learning objects. So the content that's in our central bookshelves are curated by the LibreTexts team, or the authors of the book, or the curation boards that are involved in terms of maintaining and updating the content in the bookshelf. The content in the campus bookshelf is content or books that faculty at specific campuses have come in and they built their own book, customized it, and they basically maintain it in their campus bookshelves. That's separate from the central bookshelves. We don't get involved in curating that content, with the exception of handling accessibility issues and maybe some standardization issues, in order to make sure that it facilitates or plays nicely, at least with the rest of the infrastructure that we provided. This provides the stability and the strength of centralization, but it also provides the flexibility of customization. And it's that trade-off that is a key component of how we actually formulated these libraries. Lastly, the learning objects are pages of content that are oftentimes not well suited to be organized in a specific book. For example, you can go in there in the chemistry library and look at organic chemistry labs, or look at physical chemistry labs, and you'll have a collection right there that you can pick and choose in order to build your repository, but we don't want to limit it to a very specific book because it could be a very large number. That includes other things like visualizations, simulations, and other widgets that individuals may want to use and integrate into their platform. Now, anyone who plays in the open community for any period of time gets exposed to the legalities of openness. In fact, it's the defining characteristic of OER. That is, the copyright aspects defines OER. The ability in order to identify what you can do and what you can't do, and how you actually have to be in compliant with the licenses in order to be able to do that. Now, in order to discuss that appropriately, we need several hours of effort and several bottles of alcohol in order to be able to enjoy the conversation that's out there. I don't want to go into it, other than emphasizing that we built into our infrastructure an auto attribution system in order to be able to make it so when you copy content from one page and you paste it into another page, it comes in with the attribution requirement in order to ensure that the authors are as compliant as possible with the content that they are using, in order to make sure that they are legally allowed to do what they're doing, which again is a critical component for open resources. And we go through that through a handful of mechanisms, but the key point is at the bottom of the pages will tell you where content came from and the license of the content, the author, in this case it's anonymous, and the source if we actually have it written down there, in order to make it easier for people in order to be compliant with licensing. Because again, like I mentioned before with the remixer, you're trying to remove the barrier in order to be able to remix effectively, but still be able to work within the open community. So, this slide unfortunately shouldn't be there. Okay, so I mentioned the LibreText is the largest central repository of OER textbooks, and it's popular in terms of its activity or traffic online, but we also can distribute content that's generated either in the central bookshelves or the campus bookshelves via other mechanisms. You can generate PDFs that you can distribute. We will have learning management, we can embed into learning management systems. We can generate print files that you can go to you can go to Amazon, or you can go to Lulu Express or other print on demand. We'll also interact with Lulu in order to take a book and provide it at cost in terms of getting the physical book. This book right here costs about $12. At least did before the pandemic. Upped everything, but it provided an opportunity for students to get physical books and not rely on just online access to it. We have a mechanism that we started a few years ago, but we're happy to kickstart again in more activity, especially for global impact, and that's being able to load up our content into Raspberry Pi boxes and then distributing the Raspberry Pi for offline access. Again, this was developed for this is created for developing countries, but it was clear during the pandemic that there are many populations in America that had limited access to high-speed internet, whether it's for physical reasons or for financial reasons, and this provided an opportunity in order to address those students. Okay. Jupyter Notebook System. This is a very powerful infrastructure in order to build what I refer to as the textbook of the future. So each of the pages on our libraries, you can come in, you can edit them. I'll show you how to do that when we get into the real-time interface. But Jupyter provides an opportunity in order to embed executable code or Python widgets or other aspects in order to bring it from just simple text and images to text, images, and interactivity. And this is especially important for the STEM fields. And such. So this is an example of a widget that I have in my quantum mechanics book. Yeah, it's an upper divisional course where students see the Python code, they get the widgets, they can interact a little bit here, but they can also interact with the code. The second quarter of this term, they actually are responsible in order to make very simple code because having access to code is exceedingly important for modern education. Along with everything else that comes with open, I was particularly excited about the fact that there's a lot of code out there, Python code, for example, that's freely distributed that we can grab and use. For example, this was a widget that was put on Twitter back in 2020, but someone presented this and it provided an opportunity for me to grab it, put it into my Jupyter infrastructure, and then that's embedded into the textbook. So the students in my honors chemistry class had the opportunity in order to benefit from this widget out there. Again, it's part of the sharing is caring model that underlies OER and underlies how we actually develop our system to be as flexible as possible in order to facilitate that advancement. So I mentioned that we facilitate construction, curation, adoption, and adaption. And each of those four are particularly important off of that. I'd sometimes refer to our content not as a repository, but as a curatatory. It's a term that I use, and so far I think only I use, so I will trademark it. And it essentially means that we provide an infrastructure such that the buck doesn't stop at publishing. In other words, we don't just basically say, provide the platform and then that's it. We're intimately connected to the content. We want to be able to advance the content. We want to address the content. We want to update the content and curate the content as necessary for a wide variety of purposes. So it's that engagement that really distinguishes us from all the other platforms that are out there, because the other ones are just platforms, repositories. We are a curatatory. Central to that is the construction of bots. And bots are basically scripts that will go through page by page and update certain things. Some of them could be involved in typesetting and styling. Some could actually be involved in accessibility. We have two primary bots that we use out there. One is called the Brad bot, and the other one's called the Alley bot. Alley-bot A11Y stands for accessibility, and it provides a mechanism that when individuals, authors have created content, the bot will go through in order to identify big issues for accessibility and help to fix it for the authors. So in other words, we don't have to train authors on all the aspects of accessibility in the beginning, because that's a barrier in terms of getting authors or getting instructors involved in OER. The Brad bot is slightly different. It does go through and modify things, but instead of addressing accessibility, it addresses typesetting and standardization. It essentially makes the page pretty. And the reason it's called Brad bot is it's named after Brad Pitt, because Brad Pitt is pretty, and the Brad bot is able to make things nice to look at. Now, anyone who's working in the online community, or at least education, needs to address accessibility guidelines. And the Alley bot helps to address that, subject to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. There's a little bit of text on here, which is not overly important, other than saying that everything is created on any platform for academia has to satisfy WCAG or YCAG 2.1 that's out there, even though it's 3.0 just came out. And that means all text, all organizational approaches, all videos, all homework, all interactive elements, and everything else needs to be subject to that. So we have baked into every aspect of the LibreVerse mechanisms in order to address accessibility and guide people with the tools in order to ensure maximal accessibility for what's created. One example of that was the accessibility bot, or the Alley bot. A second one is something that we've implemented into our editor, so that anytime that people are editing content on a page, they have the ability in order to do a real-time check. It will identify the top 10 biggest issues in accessibility and then provide a mechanism in order to address those issues. Again, this is real time by the authors in order to advance that. Because if you can actually nip this in the bud in the beginning, it becomes less of an issue later on for a variety of issues. And those are both ethical and legal. That slide shouldn't be there. Commons and conductor. So we're going to spend a bit more time on the commons and conductor a little bit later on, because it itself is more of an organizational tool than it is for a platform for OER hosting, with the exception of assets. So Commons and Conductor platform, it's a very strange name. I understand it. It has two facets, the Commons and the Conductor. The Commons is the front end. It's a cataloging system that you can use in order to showcase the books that you have, find books that are out there, and also to find assets and distribute assets that are there, and to do it in a branded sense. The Conductor is a project organizational tool. So the Commons has a front-end cataloging system for showcasing books, content in libraries, collections, homework, assets, and you can even identify projects that are under development across all parts of the LibreVerse, not just basically a single component on the Commons and Conductor. That's basically because there are two flavors of Commons. There's the Libre Commons, again, getting back to this Libre, that's the centralized Commons that's connected to our project. And then there's the Campus Commons. The Campus Commons is a branded commons for a specific campus. And that's what we created for about 6 or 7, I can't remember the full number, of Kansas campuses last month, that comes in and showcases the resources, the OER projects on that campus to relevant stakeholders, whether they happen to be faculty, student administrators, outside supporters and such, in order to be able to provide a centralized mechanism that's branded for finding content. The back end requires signing in to get to, while the Commons on the front end is freely available as to access. It acts as a project building tool. It's a project management infrastructure. It provides a mechanism to put down alerts. For example, if you want to go in there and say that you're interested in any resource that involves nutrition, and anywhere on the LibreVerse and any project that any campus may be doing, if they indicate that they're doing something in nutrition, I will get a notification saying that that resource is available, and I can take a look at it and see if I like it, if I want to use it. It gives an opportunity in order to be up to date on things. It provides an opportunity in order to facilitate harvest requests. This is another term that we've internalized, or that at least we've expressed out there, that we generated. Harvesting is the process of taking OER that's off of our platform and bringing it into our platform. And that's more than just basically importing. It could be importing, it could be converting to various types of technologies, addressing accessibility issues, and lots of other things. Harvesting can be a very time-consuming process in order to make sure it handles all the benefits it gets once it's within our infrastructure. And anyone who has existing OER that has a desire in order to put it into our platform can submit a harvesting request, and then we get to it when we can. It helps to facilitate adoption requests, which is useful for reporting of project impacts, provides a mechanism for peer review. It provides a mechanism for communication amongst teams or between teams on different campuses. That's part of LibreNet communication. And you can actually see any project on any other LibreNet that's publicly available in order to see whether you want to reach out. And the goal of this is in order to make it so that you don't have to recreate the wheel, because a lot of projects are recreating the wheel. And it's useful in order to be able to find a mechanism to find out if someone else is building something that you are interested in, and then talking to them and getting the content so you can actually make your project faster and better. This is the front end catalog. This is a Prince George Community College, but it shows the cataloging infrastructure for their campus. This right here is Kansas State University, and their front end. There's a few additional projects here that should be mentioned down here, largely Brian's. But again, like I mentioned, it's a branded interface to the cataloging for that specific campus. Having a few slides that shouldn't be in here, and I apologize for that. The back end the cataloging system, every project that's created has a catalog, has a back-end conductor page. That conductor page, this is a little bit out of date. We've changed the style a bit just last week, but it provides a mechanism for a team to get together, communicate on what they need to do, build tasks, make Gantt plots, store assets, facilitate peer review, accessibility, or concerted mechanism of accessibility. In other words, it is a project management tool, and the only one to my knowledge that's optimized for OER. It's freely available for everyone to go to hook into. But of course, every single branded commons or campus commons has a backend conductor that faculty can log into. Forums. We have several mechanisms in order to facilitate community conversations around what people are building and issues and such like that. We had several forums out there that's available at forums.libretext.org. We're in the process of merging them into the conductor pages so that they are not a separate technology necessarily, and that just facilitates better usage. We also have a Discord channel at chat.libretext.org that many of our team members do stay logged into, that people can come in and ask questions and get pseudo real-time feedback much faster than forums or emails or ticketing can do. Project Solo. This we're going to be releasing a little bit later on, I think in a month or two, but you can have access right now via the Launchpad. The Project Solo is a mechanism in order to store courses instead of textbooks or homework system. So you can think of it if you have a Canvas as a Canvas Commons. However, because we don't lock into a specific learning management system, this provides an opportunity for campuses that are using Blackboard or D2L or Moodle or something like that can also capitalize on pre-made courses that have textbook and homework and assets all organized, just like Canvas Commons is, but without the limitation of Canvas. And for those campuses that think that you're going to be using Canvas in perpetuity, Canvas LMSs come and LMSs go, and there will be a new one that'll come out at some point or another, perhaps even AI based. That's out there. Okay. I touched upon this, but things are going a little bit slow here, so I want to just separate out the concept of how network communication happens. The idea behind the LibreNet, or sorry, the LibreVerse and the Commons Conductor is an opportunity for projects at different campuses to be able to communicate with each other in order to be able to progress or advance their developments instead of having a more centralized approach that we have formulated within our core LibreNet perspective. So, adapt. So, getting back to the golden handcuffs, one of the biggest golden handcuffs that publishers provide to faculty is homework. And that's what we've been addressing for the last few years, thanks to support from the California Education Learning Lab and also from the U.S. Department of Education. So we knew in the very beginning when we started this project that we wanted to build a homework system. We had a set of rules or guidelines that we wanted that homework system in order to address, and we wanted to, and we tried multiple times in order to build this and failed multiple times. We wanted something that was flexible across multiple fields, dynamic, comprehensive, integrated, LMS agnostic, using the same argument I mentioned before, and powerful. That's there. And all tied together to be free or as nearly free as possible in order to handle sustainability issues. And I mentioned that we failed multiple times up until relatively recently, about 4 years ago, that we received grants in order to be able to pursue the construction of ADAPT. ADAPT is the homework system to accompany the textbooks that's in the LibreVerse. The answer to that question is essentially slowly and efficiently. It takes a lot of time in order to build this infrastructure. It gets a lot of time in order to hone the infrastructure, in order to make sure everything's optimized. But we're steadily moving forward, and thanks to the sponsors, we have the person power, the financial resources, and the buy-in in order to be able to make this resource out there. The key aspect behind ADAPT and all open source projects is to not reinvent the wheel. If someone has already created something, there's no reason to ignore it unless you can identify specific flaws associated with that. To that end, the ADAPT homework system, which is available at adapt.libretext.org, you can tap into, but you can also find the link on Launchpad. Hold on a second, Andrew. I'll address your question in a second. And ADAPT is actually named ADAPT because it has adaptive learning infrastructure behind it. I'll talk about it in a few slides, but to dovetail into Andrew's comment here is, again, we want to build something that's powerful, but we don't want to build things from scratch. And there are lots of people who have built homework systems from scratch that are poorer than existing material out there. So what we've implemented into our infrastructure is other technologies, including our own, in order to throw it all into one loop. So we have auto-graded technologies where we have 4 primary technology or sub-technologies connected to it. We have WebWork, which is a technology out of upstate New York, Rochester, that came out there. We have iMathAS, which is the technology underlying MyOpenMath. And Lumen Learning's own commercial product and XYZ homework system. We have H5P, which is a new technology that's useful for making especially visual-based questions. And then we have native technologies, which is our term to saying the ones that we have created, and they're oftentimes based on other protocols, like the learning management system QTI, question test interoperability protocol that's found in learning management systems. So the upshot here is, instead of focusing on one technology, building an infrastructure where you can add in multiple technologies in order to advance the corpus provides the opportunity in order to recognize that no one technology is able to work on every single field and every single type that's out there. By making this infrastructure as flexible like that, we can get the benefits of WebWork, which is really well suited for upper divisional math and engineering classes, or iMathAS, which is well suited for lower divisional classes, H5P, which covers the gamut, or questions that may have been created or in question banks in learning management systems like Canvas and Moodle and such. So we folded them all in together, which means that the corpus gets really big because we get content from a wide variety of sources here. We have about 210 to 220,000 questions that are out there in a wide variety of fields, and that's going to be getting bigger and bigger as we progress, because we still have another 3 more years in the California Education Learning Lab grant. To complement the auto-grade capabilities is open-ended question types. For those of you who are familiar with Canvas, that'd be similar to integrating something like Easy Grader, I think is the term that they use. It's a mechanism in order to facilitate open-ended questioning or open-ended grading using individuals, humans, could be TAs, could be instructors, in order to facilitate submissions by students that involve text, audio files, for example, in foreign languages or music, or just any other file, including PDF, Excel, or other things that they can grade and bring together. In my classes, especially my upper divisional classes, I have a lot of open-ended questioning type because I can't generate auto-graded questions that require long proofs and long calculations that are easily submittable. Now, who knows how things progress, especially when AI gets put together. So hopefully I addressed your question, Andrew. The key point is that any question or any course that's in iMathAS or MyOpenMath, we can import into our version of iMathAS. So this is a snapshot of my courses. This is, I think, a couple of years ago, but basically shows the standard way that we have individual courses, start dates, end dates, the sort of thing that you may be exposed to in other infrastructures out there. Andrew asked a question, will open-ended questions allow equations? Yeah, you can submit equations, formulas. Largely we use LaTeX in order to be able to interface that via MathJax, if those terms mean something to you. In some cases, we may be able to facilitate AI-based, I don't want to call them grading, but I would say evaluation in order to facilitate grading out there. And I've used those for my lab class, for the lab part of my general chemistry classes. Okay, so ADAPT is built for multimodal use. So different instructors have different pedagogies in their use of homework. Uh, some faculty just prefer to give a website, the ADAPT website, for students in order to tap into, and they can log in and access it just like it's students, just like it's a separate instance. That provides no need in order to couple that to any other external technology, and is ready to go. About 90% of our students, I believe, use this as the primary mechanism for accessing ADAPT. However, I'm particularly interested in making textbooks engaging, and one mechanism for doing that is to embed questions into the textbook. And this is an example, and I can provide a link, or maybe Brian can provide a link of his book that has been using that for several years, where the students actually do their homework in the textbook. And that provides a mechanism in order to draw students to interact with the textbook, to engage with the textbook, and to facilitate greater learning that comes from that. I'm going to show you a snapshot of this. It will be released later on this academic year, which is a phone app. So it provides an opportunity in order to have students access their homework and do their homework on the phone. 50% of the students that access our textbooks access the textbooks through their phone. It's the native technology that they use. So let's bring the technology to them in order to facilitate easier completion of their homework. However, this phone app also provides a mechanism in order to take the place of in-class clickers. So like iClickers or Turning Tech capabilities, you can come in and you can open up a question. Students can actually answer the question, get the poll, and get a response back and forth off of that without having to pay another $25 to $40 in addition to the homework system that you have at $40 plus per student per course. Again, part of our goal is to reduce this cost as possible. And lastly, all these things can actually fold back into your learning management system. They don't have to be used independent of other technologies. And we can interface with interface with Canvas and other learning management systems via learning tools interoperability, LTI, or more advanced with API that gives you a little bit more convenience. So that's out there. There were a few questions that came in the chat here. Edwin, do you have a chemical structure drawing tool that can be integrated? Actually, that's a really good question. That was our plan to start that process several months ago. It will be in place. We just completed or we're just about to complete the solutions to all the OpenStax organic chemistry, the McMurray organic chemistry textbook that was rehashed by OpenStax. But we need to provide an opportunity for students to come in and build questions, and then you can auto grade them using Smiles or Inchi or other approach off of doing that. That should be implemented sometime early summer or even spring, depending upon how the schedule works. My bigger issue is something a little bit more advanced, and that it's a very time-consuming process in order to build chemicals or build molecules online, even by the more advanced approaches that you do. However, that phone app gives us the opportunity in order to take the camera of the phone, and if an individual student wants to draw out the molecule, you could take it and then use machine learning in order to take that picture and convert it into a molecule that's then shown on the screen. And then the student can take a look and make sure that it exactly follows right, maybe tweak a hydrogen here and there or something like that in order to be able to set it up. And that makes it far faster than being able to construct a chemical molecule directly online, although you can happily do that. That should be in place by the upcoming academic year. But if you have an interest in order to take a closer look at that, please contact me, because we're very excited about this added technology that we put out there. Carolyn asked a question: is that your own AI tool? This is probably in regards to the lab grading, and we set that up to use the to use ChatGPT and not our own infrastructure. There was a slide that was missing here, and unfortunately, I apologize. I want to actually pull this thing up because it's useful. And this is part of the homework. I can't even spell YouTube. So several months ago, we I'm gonna put this on here. We partnered with a company called Sandbox AQ, and Sandbox AQ is a spin out from Google / Alphabet to do AI based stuff in addition to quantum sensors and a few other things. So we're partnering with them in order to build an infrastructure in order to essentially complement textbooks. So when you actually build the textbook in here, it makes a virtual tutor that's on the side. But in contrast to things like ChatGPT, it has a back end that's called a RAG. It's a retrieval augmented generator. It essentially provides a mechanism to fine tune the content that the learning the LLM, the large learning model, is able to read from, and that significantly reduces hallucinations. That's incorrect feedback, and this tutor will couple into not just the corpus of the questions, the corpus of the textbook, but also the questions. So you can come in, you can ask a question here, and this was a right here, test me on the proper case for a person with heart failure. And then it pops up. This is a specific type of question that's used for the next generation nursing infrastructure that you can work with. So this is something that we're very excited in order to be able to implement. Once we actually have that in place, we're hoping to then transition it and not rely on ChatGPT because it is a financial model that you have to pay into it in perpetuity. And this mechanism provides the opportunity in order to reduce hallucinations, and it's all going to be open source that people can grab and run their models outside of our infrastructure. So we're very excited about that. That may or may not be where your question was going, Carolyn, but the slide should have been in the slide deck. We were so excited about this. We announced this in Davos, Switzerland last month at the World Economic Forum, which I had the pleasure of obtaining COVID while I was over there. So I put a link in the chat. I encourage you to take a look at that. If you have any questions about that, let us know. I think it's going to be very exciting about what it's able to do, especially in chemistry with all the complexities associated with cheminformatics and providing that information out to supporting the use of the textbook. Again, getting back to the argument that an engaging textbook is a textbook that typically improves learning, and then and that's what our mission is out there. So anyways, there was another question here. Okay, Edwin was talking about the vote capture tool. I think that's really cool. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. Brian showed a link to his H5P. Okay, so I mentioned the phone app. This is a snapshot of our phone app that we'll be releasing very soon. This is just going to bring up a single question. This is not in-class clicker mode. This is just basically accessing the question that's out there. If anyone has a desire in order to test these things out, I can put you onto our short list that you can get access to the code right now, but they're not out in the respective stores on either Apple or Android. I will also mention that we are working on ways in order to complement this with a more advanced mechanism to download the textbook on your phone in order to advance this thing, not just being able to download it to the Raspberry Pi box that's out there. Again, the focus off of here ultimately is meant to have full offline access to homework and textbook. It's going to take us a while to be able to do that because of the complexity of the homework infrastructure. This is a particularly long presentation, and I'm just waiting for it to pull up the problem. And the problem is going to pull up will be an H5P problem right there, and I didn't click it right because I'm not up. There we go. So this provides a mechanism when you do in order for students to access these questions immediately, irrespective of where they happen to be, as long as they have access to the internet. And like I said, we're working on ways in order to facilitate this as offline so students can do their homework if they don't have access to the internet. And then once they get access to the internet, it will then upload it into our central server. That's going to be forthcoming. So, okay. We're very happy with where technology is going and where technology has been, or existing technology and adapt. But you may be wondering where the name adapt comes from. And adapt comes from adaptive learning, and there's a wide range of different modalities of adaptive learning, we choose a traditional, we choose an approach that's a little bit simple compared to black box approaches. So when we hear in academia about adaptive learning, we oftentimes hear from a perspective of a recommender engine, basically a black box that's able to digest all the information and help to guide students into what they should be studying next based on their profile. The problem with that is the black box tells you no information about how it operates. It's a black box, hence the term. The second part of that is that it doesn't provide any level of agency for students to engage with their material. They're essentially spoon-fed what they're supposed to be doing at any one step. In order to try to build more robust students and try to avoid some of the issues associated with building black boxes, like lots of money necessary in order to build them and lots to hone them because they oftentimes don't work out terribly well, we implemented a system based off of decision trees. We call them learning trees. It provides an opportunity that instead of just giving a single question to students as a series of assignments that would be traditional, like in a learning management system, we give a question out, and then if the student fails that question, they can then go into a tree that deals with remediation steps in order to help to fill in the gaps that that student needs in order to be successful in that question. Now, the difference between this and a recommender engine is that students have their agency in order to decide where they want to go. You increase agency, you increase engagement, and you typically increase learning. So the idea behind here is to get students more active in terms of their educational experience. It not only facilitates engagement, it also facilitates metacognition, because as a choose your own adventure, if you play around in the trees properly, you can then get a do-over as a student and come back up to the question in order to do it. So you have a little bit of a carrot in order to be able to engage with the trees, but you engage with the trees in the areas that you feel that you need improvement. So that's where the metacognition skills come in, that again, you don't get from a recommender engine that just basically spoon feeds the answer that's out there. We have a range of learning trees already established. Most of them are in general chemistry, but we're going to be building a whole collection of those in a wide range of other STEM fields over the next several years. The studio is one special part of the LibreVerse that is connected oftentimes to ADAPT, and it's our central repository for H5P. So it's a specific technology for questions that people can access, and you can come in and you can build with your account that you get from our infrastructure. All the problems that are in the link that Brian put into the chat are H5P. You can take a look at it right there. It has some benefits and it has some detractions depending upon viewing security and accessibility issues. But the key point is it's a valuable tool that you can capitalize on and use in order to build engaging textbooks, or use it in your homework, or use it in your in-class polling infrastructure, your clickers that's out there. And you can access that on your Launchpad, or if you want to go directly to it, you can go to studio.libretexts.org. Now, I'm nearing the end of my more formal introduction of the LibreVerse. As I mentioned in the beginning, we have a particular interest in order to ensure that what we're creating is pedagogically useful. And that ultimately relies on data collection and evaluation that's out there. So we've implemented into the LibreVerse a learning analytics infrastructure. We are updating that, and that's going to be released by June, but it provides a mechanism in order to evaluate how students are interacting with the textbook, and from that information, guide pedagogy for how that textbook is used, or to evaluate the efficacy of the material in terms of learning, which is ultimately the success of any material that's generated. So this is an old study. It's close to a decade old, where I taught two back-to-back classes of about 500 students each. So I taught 1,000 students that term. I'm never going to do this again. This right here is the one used the conventional textbook, and the other one used the ChemWiki, the precursor to the LibreTexts project. And this shows you the activity per day of the students in the class that used the ChemWiki project online. And what you see are, this general decay of a background here, which is actually seen in every class that I've ever collected data for. And the second one, you see massive spikes of studying, coincidentally, one day before my exam. Now, it's not surprising that students cram. But from this infrastructure, we're able not just to identify this in bulk, but we can identify this in an individual basis and cross-reference and identify how much does cramming affect teaching. I should be clear here and say this in a slightly different fashion. How does the performance of the students that cram differ from the students that don't cram? And maybe a correlation and maybe cause and effect off of here. And the key point is it's somewhere about 10% poorer for the students that cram versus the students that don't cram. So we use that as actionable information for the next term in order to be able to make weekly quizzes instead of midterms as a mechanism in order to get the background up off of here. This is a smaller class. This is an accelerated class. It's a different cohort of students. I can't compare this with this one. But this was an example of showing how you can get actual information from just this one specific set of data. This is a snapshot of our current analytics board, which we're going to be updating again soon, showing the activity for a specific general chemistry class. Start to identify there's a little bit of cramming right here, a little bit of cramming here, but you can see that the activity that we have has reduced this amount to this value right here. This shows me the progress of looking at a specific page when people were reviewing it, and I can start to use this as a mechanism. For example, if I say to my students, please read a specific page, I can evaluate whether they're doing it. Now, this is not terribly dissimilar from the sort of information that you get in Canvas for activities that are happening on Canvas, but this is for the textbook. This is also for the homework infrastructure, and you can use this in order to do things like build a early warning system for intervention in order to identify students that have a propensity or may have a higher probability of failing the class. No, so that's a snapshot. This could be very daunting for people to internalize. I understand that. Hopefully something on here is attractive to you, and we can use that as a mechanism in order to dovetail you into the entire LibreVerse out there. So let me end with what I started, which is essentially our mission statement. We're implementing a community-built platform for the construction, curation, adoption, and adaption of open educational resources that's comprehensive and can be curated at multiple levels. We're very happy with where we've gone in the last 16 years, and we're very excited about where the future is going to be holding us. And we're again very excited that Kansas has decided to join the Libre consortium. That's the end of the more formal discussion. The goal that I mentioned before of everything is that students are not a market to exploit or profit off of. I'm going to end this here. I do have a few steps in order to get started with more concrete aspects, which is what I was requesting in order to address. There were a few comments in the chat. Let me take a quick look off of there. Andrew, I need to step out. Okay, Andrew's gone. And Lee's on. So everyone is just leaving there, but they have the opportunity in order to look at the video at a later date. So do we want to take a few minute break? Do we want to just chat over a few things before we actually talk about some of the simplified ways in order to get things going? Does anyone have any questions or concerns? I'm not sure how Brian would like to proceed here.
So there was one question that Carolyn asked, have you already harvested McMurray's organic chemistry textbook? Is that when you guys have harvested or not? Or?
Oh yeah, we harvested it last year completely. And the homework, we harvested the solutions behind it. So the OpenStack solutions had a lot to desire for the pedagogical utility of. So we have a couple organic chemistry faculty. I'm a physical chemist, so not organic chemist. So I try to stay outside of stay in my lane, that is. And they come in and they've been updating and providing more powerful solutions off of that. We have that in the first 22 to 23 chapters. And I think we have another 4 or 5 chapters left. So we should be done with that in a few months. Then we have to go back to the OpenStack's to the McMurray's book, because there are not up-to-date rules for nomenclature addressed in that book, and we need to fine-tune that book in order to be up to snuff off of here. But it's available right now. If you like, I can pull it up on the chemistry library for you to take a look at. You can remix, you can use. It has the same utility as it would be on the OpenStack's book infrastructure. We're going to be advancing a few things for accessibility purposes, but that But that doesn't change the utility of our infrastructure right now.
Can I ask you a question, Delmar?
Sure, certainly.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But so if we have faculty, so our chemistry department is adopting that textbook. So
Okay.
should they wait until you have all that finished before they start working in LibreTexts? So maybe that's a good example to look at how, if you're a faculty member, you've got something in there, how do they then go in and get that put in to a new their instance of it, or where they can remix it, or however they want to do it.
Okay, so there were several things that you put out there. So the first thing is about waiting. So we don't take the position that anything is ever done, because nothing is ever done. So the question is, I would modify a little bit, is it good enough in order to be able to do what you want to do with it? And the answer is yes. It is. It's up to the same level as what OpenStax has generated. The issue that we have is that's really not good enough. Part of the benefits associated with McMurray's has been around for 11 editions beforehand. Part of the problems with that is that many of the things that have been updated from IUPAC in terms of proper nomenclature hasn't been updated because it has older stuff that's anachronistic, not anachronistic, but artifactual from its background. So we want to go through in order to fix that, and basically do a review of the organic chemistry of their book. And we have the same issue with their general chemistry book, but 2/3 of OpenStax books are really harvested products. This is an example of the harvesting where they actually kept the branding of the author. Or many times they have removed the authors, or they hid the author list off here. This is one that are really overt off of it. And this is a real coup. This was really great that it became an open community. So feel free in order to grab and run with it. We also have our own version of their book that we were building before McMurray released his book, where we went through and updated it, and we changed the structure, and many of those things have a very different feel and examples than what's in the book. So I encourage you to dovetail back and forth between the two, in addition to a handful of other organic chemistry materials out there. Now, the second part of your question, I think, was mentioning how to use these materials in order to customize your own book. At least that's how I internalized your question. If that's the answer, that's what we're going to be discussing a little bit later on in this next hour. So if you're going to be sticking around here for multiple minutes, then we can go and I can address that more real time, unless I didn't interpret your question properly.
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
So there's also a question about what's the per student cost per adapt?
That's a really good question. So while the LibreVerse, while the textbooks and everything are freely available, you can come in and access these there, whether you're customize them or they're essentially curated. We don't want to share the corpus of homework questions freely to students, because that will defeat the point of using them as homework questions. So we have a little bit of a dichotomy that we needed to address the open desire from the need in order to preserve it. But more importantly, the infrastructure that we have for ADAPT is set up because much of the material is open source and much of the material is intended to be distributed properly. We make it so that any faculty member that's verified will have the ability in order to access the corpus at any time that they want. So any faculty member can come in and you can go in the corpus and you can do a search through it, and we can pull that up a little bit later on in order to be able to find questions and use it as you want. But if you want to use it as a homework platform, then we would like to have a business model or sustainability model for the content, so that they and that sustainability model is essentially asking that campuses and students, hold on one second here. Okay, sorry about that. So so the upshot to that that whole preamble is, for LibreNet member campuses, we ask someone, preferably the campus, to pay $10 per student per term, irrespective of how many classes they happen to make, with a maximum of $30 per year. So it never goes above that. So that oftentimes may mean that they get free summers. That's involved in that. We're trying to operate at cost. In fact, because we have non-commercial claused content, we want to operate legal. We really want to operate at cost. And that's the price point that we have here. And that's separate from LibreNet buy-in, because the technology and the infrastructure for homework is actually a bit more complicated than it is for the textbook-based systems. Hopefully that longish thing explained it. I have a slide that actually does go through that, each of the 3 steps that's connected to that. Now, the only exception to that is if you're in the state of California, then you get the homework system for free, because the state of California invested $5 million into building it, and this is part of the perks that they come up with. If Kansas wants to give me $5 million, then I'm willing to switch that out there too. So there was another question. What's the process for faculty to become verified? That's actually the first step in this process right here, is obtaining a LibreOne account. I don't know if you want to transition to this, or if you want to take a short break.
If you're okay, I would probably go ahead and continue.
Okay, I'm perfectly fine. I have enough caffeine in order to be able to run. Okay, so this right here is sort of a 5-step simplified process in order to be able to build and generate a textbook. There are other OERs and textbooks, like homework systems, ancillary materials, and other things like that, that have a slightly different general workflow here. But most of the people that are interested in using the LibreVerse are interested in building textbooks that are out there. Although not all, I'd say probably 80 to 90%. So the first step off of there is to obtain a LibreOne account. LibreOne is our single sign-on infrastructure. We have lots of platforms. Each platform technically requires signing into it, but we have a single account that's meant to cover all the platforms. Right now, there are 2 platforms that are not part of that. One is Adapt, which you need a separate account for, which was freely available. And the second one is the Nova course system, but we haven't formally released that for people to come in and create things on there. So this is sort of the one account to rule them all approach, that when you get, then you're able to move around from Commons and Conductor to libraries to Studio, soon to be Jupyter, and a few other things like that. So if you go to one.libretext.org, you can get that. It's actually a 3-step process. One step is to submit your email address in order to make sure your email address is real. That's to avoid spam, because we get harassed a lot just because of our size. Lots of people try to hack into our infrastructure. Once we're verified your account is set, then you submit more paperwork, more information about who you are, what campus you are, what you're interested in. And then at that point, it goes to our development team. And within 24 to 48 hours, we'll review on our side, make sure that the requested information, like your online bio, it links up to your email address, so we know that you are an instructor, and then we verify you as an instructor that's out there. Once you're verified as an instructor, then you have access to everything that verified instructors have. Oftentimes, those are things like assets and files from individual campus, individual projects that are out there. But eventually that's going to be folded into Adapt, so that only verified instructors would get access to Adapt, again, to preserve the integrity of our question corpus. So those are the 3-step process that's out there. Colby, I guess it's the same question. Okay, to see homework problems. The one exception to here is if you go to adapt.libretext. Oh wait, let me phrase that. When you submit for this process, you request that you want to have access to Adapt. And then in the verification process, we create an Adapt account for you at the same time. Although we can certainly give you Adapt account directly. So that's the step number 1. That's involved. Step number 2 is to build a conductor project. And since this is here, I will do this. So I'm logged. Am I not logged? Okay, I'm logged into my demo account. So like I said, we have 16 independent libraries. I can go to any of these libraries like chemistry. And this is not my demo account. So this looks a little bit different than the normal demo account with these sandboxes and workbenches and under construction. But you have these three principal components that are out here. Let me log out and log back in again. With my demo account, so you can actually see see what it would look like in your view versus my view as an administrator. Okay, so here I am. Right now, here are all the libraries that are connected. Here are the applications that I mentioned through and went through the steps for. So I can go into the chemistry library. This again will look a little bit. Actually, it still doesn't look different. I'm not logged in as demo. It keeps my browser keeps on forcing me to be logged in with my administrator account. But you can come in, and when you have a black bar here, that's when you've signed in. If you don't have a black bar, you're not signed in, which means you can't edit. So you can come in and you can edit these things as you see fit. Here is the little launch pad, like I mentioned before, that will open up the same thing. Every time you see a launch, a little rocket, you can click on it in order to be able to access it and such. So, anyways, back to the steps here is to build a new conductor project. So if I go to conductor, I just clicked on this button right here in the map, the conductor. Now remember, the conductor does have my demo. The conductor is a project management tool. And it is the front end to all projects that we create. Every project has to have a conductor project or conductor page connected to it. And this is what my conductor page looks like. So it has some details here associated with me and my accounts, what alerts I may have. Remember, I can make an alert for any specific project like nutrition. And I could say any project book or homework system. I can click on that. And now if anyone makes something that has nutrition connected to it, I will get an email connected to that. It says I'm a verified instructor. Again, that was manually constructed. Computers don't verify for us. We need to actually be convinced that you are a verified instructor for having that status. And these are several projects that I have recently edited. And right up here is a project where I can link up, not link up, I can pin up to your special projects. Like here's a principles of economics. If I pin this project right there, I can then go back and now it's pinned up here. That's just a equivalent of a what is it? My brain is escaping me of bookmarking. sorry about that. So if you go to any project like this one right here, it basically tells you, okay, well, here's some details associated with the project. It tells me demo account. This is some threads and conversations. These are where I can upload files, and these are where I can upload tasks. This conductor project is a fairly bare project. There's not much going on here. There's not any communication between projects. That's perfectly fine if it's an individual that's creating it instead of a team. But if there's a team, they can actually use this as a way to communicate with each other. So back to where I'm talking about, I'm going to a conductor page. I have right here, and this big green button that says create a project. That's creating a conductor page. So you can click on it, and I can decide that I want to make this a project keyboard test. I can decide who gets to see the project, if it's only for internal purposes, or if I want other people to see that the project exists, which is convenient for identifying if you're building a project that someone else or building something that someone else is creating. I'm just going to create that. And now it's created this empty project page. So that's the second step off of here. Again, this right here is a convenient mechanism in order to store and communicate all the resources associated with the project. It's a project management tool that's out there. I will mention that we have this little question mark here. This is probably something that Brian hasn't even seen because we released it about a week and a half ago. And it provides a mechanism in order to access information that we have in our knowledge base as like our construction guide. We're still fine tuning that, but it gives you an opportunity in order to make tickets. If you have a need for help from the support staff, it will actually generate a ticket that then gets handed off to my support staff. This makes things a bit easier than submitting emails, which oftentimes get lost in how we operate. So anyways, I digress off of here. So again, this is an empty conductor page. I have the ability to add anyone to the conductor page that I want. Let's say, since Brian is there you go. I can add him to this page. And now he will have editing rights to any book that I have connected to this page. So this is ability in order to curate the team who has editing rights, not just to the conductor page, to the project that you're creating. So we have a timeline. This timeline doesn't have any tasks, so it's not terribly important. We have peer review. We can build an infrastructure in order to facilitate peer review. We have accessibility. This will actually grab the table of contents and provide a mechanism in order to evaluate the different criteria used for WCAG 2.1 compatibility. I'll show you an example of that, of something that's actually more developed, because it's useful after you have stuff established. Not so useful in the beginning. So anyways, next one is I just create the book, which is this blue button right here. We'll probably turn it to green the next day or two. And this will create a new book. And I think I was calling this test book, but I'm going to call this a book in business. I'm going to create it. So now it's going to create a template of the book that's connected to my conductor page. Again, the conductor page is meant for organizing these things, facilitates these things, and makes it easier for us when people ask questions that we can go in and look at the conductor page and see what's going on and how people are doing things. So I just did step 3. This should be inside the conductor project, create the new textbook template. My spelling was not terribly good as I quickly wrote this. And that's what I just did. So when I do that, now instead of being this new textbook or page, it now has textbook link. If I click on that, it will open up the textbook. Again, every book that's in our bookshelves has a conductor page connected to it. And this is the new book that I've created. It has a front matter, back matter, has a temporary front chapter off here. And these are some page settings that or metadata that's connected to the book itself. So that right there is the first 3 steps. The next consists of what you do with the book, how you edit it, how you remix it, how you create it into what it's supposed to be. And that right there can take a wide variety of steps depending upon what the person wants to do and how much of the thing that they want to use to remix and other things like that. If you like, I can show you the remix something onto here. Is that, Brian, that you would like me to do?
Yeah, I think it'd be good rather than try to create something from scratch. I think it'd be good to show how you can remix.
Okay. So I want to use the remixer. Remember when I was talking about the remixer? The remixer was a tool that's a graphical user interface, a GUI, in order to drag and drop content into creating a new book. More specifically, using content from other books to build my own book, subject to my own rules, or at least what I want the book to look like. So right now it's under More Tools, and you click the OER remixer right here. If you do that, it's going to pull up the remixer and it's going to pull up the book automatically. This is the new thing that and people have been around the block a little bit. We had to manually pick up the book. So this brought in the book right here. So on the right-hand side is the book that I created. This is the general template, which includes the front matter, includes title page, info page, table of contents, and the back matter includes index, glossary, and detailed licensing. Detailed licensing gives you a breakdown of all the licensing of every page that's on there. This is part of our dedication to making sure we're compliant with the licensing that's out there. So as Brian mentioned here, right now on the left-hand side, we have access to the entire corpus of content. You're not going to see Sandbox or Workbench on here, or actually under construction, to be honest. This is just because this is my team, my account. But you can come into the bookshelves and you can say, I want to make a book and I'm going to grab principles of marketing, and I can grab chapter 4, and I can just pop it right below chapter 1, that is. And what I just did is I grabbed chapter 4 and all the pages below 4, and now it's all pulled into here. I can come in and say, I'm not going to be teaching buy-in centers, so I'm going to delete that. And I don't care about ethics. I'm going to delete that. That provides a mechanism in order to customize and build your book out there across multiple places. I can decide that my next chapter should deal with Swiss law, criminal law. And I could pop it in here between first chapter and second chapter. I'm going to delete that empty page. And I brought it in. There were no sub pages associated with that infrastructure. And that's it. So you have access again to a wide variety of different, I mean, all the public content that's available, the 900,000 pages, if you want to even include Espanol and Ukrainskia on here. And you just basically drag and drop them in order to be able to build a book. The bigger issue here oftentimes is not necessarily being able to drag and drop and build the book that you want using the material that you have. It's to be able to find the material, to make sure that you are happy with the material, and to organize what you're going to be constructing beforehand. I do not recommend using the remixer without having a game plan. And this is what Brian actually pasted into the chat, is you want to build a remixing map. There's a little bit of a link right here to a remixing map. There's something wrong with that link. What's going on here? Okay. You had the link right here. So this is an example of one type of remixing map where you can basically organize, module 1, or this is a better example here. You could make a new book that's going to be in yellow. This is an Excel form that you can actually download here. It doesn't matter whether it's Excel or Word. It doesn't matter if you're writing on a piece of paper or toilet paper. It just provides a mechanism in order to organize what content that you want in a corpus, organized in the way that you want it. And once you've done that, then it loses its utility. You don't need to worry about it anymore. So this was something that Lubbock Christian University made a few years ago in order to organize their chemistry book, taking resources from other chemistry books. So in this case here, this is a map from of Tro's book, which means a text map is our organization of a commercial product, where we take OER and we duplicate it using structures around the organization of the original map. I mentioned earlier about OpenStack's organic chemistry book, which was McMurray's chemistry book. We built a text map of McMurray's chemistry book. So it has the same structure as the OpenStack's book or the McMurray's book, but it has different content that's off of there. Both are, in this case here, open source. So anyways, this shows you an example for, in this case here, chapter 1.1, first chapter, section 1.1 under chapter 1 takes 1.1 from the scope of chemistry by this book. 1.2 is 1.2, 1.3 in their book, it wants it to be 2.5. They just feel they want a different design or structure around their book, which is exactly what OER provides you. I don't know any faculty member that's 100% happy with their book. Even if they even constructed it, the editors typically have some influence off there. This provides a mechanism in order to make it so that faculty can be happy with their research. So in this case here, 1.4 of their book is now 2.1. You can see it starts to deviate here, 2.1, 4.1. So this sort of map is really useful in order to be able to evaluate how you want to build your book. And this means you need to go through these pages and say, yes, I like this page, I like this page, I like this page. And, significant figure in calculations, we have 10 different pages dealing with significant figure in calculations. You need to find the one that I like as an instructor or as a remixer that I want to be in my book. Now, I will mention that things are not set in stone. You can create the book and then you can come back and reload it and then rebuild and customize and curate it as you want using the remixer. So you don't need to have everything perfect that's out there. There are videos on using the remixer. There's also feedback on how to use it in our construction guide. I should probably just grab it here under chapter 7, which is remixing existing content. And that's what Brian actually pasted into the chat. So in this case here, I was dragging things over, but it's not saved in my on my site until I decide to save the server button right here. So this is basically prepares it, and then I need to save it to my server in order to create it. Now I want to mention a couple things off of here. We have only one sort of feature connected to the remixer to make it as simple as possible, and that's the auto number. That's the one that makes it so when you grab this section that says, let's say 1.2, and I move it up to here, it then gets renumbered. Sorry, let's say 1.4 and move it up to here. It gets renumbered to 1.2. That makes it so you don't have to worry about trying to organize the numbering of what's going on. It's all happened. You can turn it off if you want with that button on here. But I will mention that if you change the number on the title and the code inside here has been updated to our up-to-date standards off of things, it will then change equation numbers, table numbers, and figure numbers in order to reflect that number that's on the title. So that gives you the ability in order to not worry about many of the finer mundane issues of making sure the equation numbers and table numbers are all working out right and focus on evaluating the content or editing the content as necessary. I'm just going to save this to server. It gives me an overview of what's going to be done when I actually save it. And I save it right there. And now it's going through 12 steps in order to be able to do this. This will be done in 12 seconds. Okay, I can click on this link right down here. It goes back to the same link that my conductor page happens. And now it looks a little bit different because it grabbed in content. If I want to go under contents here, I can expand it and see now my book has entrepreneurial components to it. That may or may not be what my exact project happens to be, but I have the ability to remix, drag and drop, and create the resource out here. It's an exceedingly powerful tool in order to deal with an exceedingly powerful corpus that we've constructed for you guys to be able to tap into. And our goal is to make it so that corpus is as big as possible, so that with the remixer, you can actually build things with as little or few limitations as possible in order to be able to generate your results. So that's the remixer as a whole. There are videos on the remixer on our YouTube channel at LibreTexts or at youtube.libretext.org, or if you do a search on LibreTexts on YouTube, and it will show you how to go about doing these things. I will mention that we do have 3 primary professional development training series for the community. One is relatively light, which is the Open Education Week, which is in 2 or 3 weeks from now. And we have a set of training sessions there, and one of them is how to remix. So people are uncomfortable with remixing because it's not necessarily a skill that many people are comfortable with. They can get exposed to that. During the summer, we have another meeting called the LibreFest, which is typically a largish meeting nowadays, about 150 people who attend. That goes into finer details. Now it's 4 days of all the various aspects that I mentioned here, but in far more detail. And then October, we have Oktoberfest, which is sort of a little baby LibreFest, which is also growing in magnitude in order to go through these things. So in addition to things that we have online, you have access to videos of those meetings, and we have office hours Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 10 o'clock Pacific time at zoom.libretext.org, which I can paste into this chat just to make sure that anybody who has an interest in order to get some additional help can come by and go through it. We have a priority for LibreNet members, but you guys are LibreNet members, so you can jump the line. Let me just mention one quick thing here. And this gets a little bit complicated, but content that we have here, it looks like it's on this page, but it's really stored somewhere else. That's called transclusion. That point is not overly important here. I just wanted to untransclude it because I want you to see the editor in place here. So if I edit the page, I have content off of here, and this is an editor that I can come in that's not too dissimilar from what you may have experienced in a variety of other platforms out there, where I can come in and decide how I want to edit these things in graphical. If you're more technologically savvy, you can switch to HTML and view the HTML version, which is the markup language that runs basically most of the internet. I'm not going to save that, even though I'm going to delete this page anyways. I will show you the auto attribution down here. So it basically says this content here was taken from this page that had this license, and this was the attribution connected to that page. So now I'm in full compliance with the licensing of that content. So anyways, I digress. There were a few comments in the chat.
Yeah, Carolyn asked, can these be reused? So if you already have created one for organic chemistry, could our instructors reuse yours? I think maybe she's talking about campus, oriented and not.
I think she's talking about the remixing map. So you can always create the book and then someone else can grab it. Just remix and you just grab the whole book out there. We do have the ability, even though we don't do it that often, that when you create your book here, you can actually save the map and then you can hand the map out to someone else. It's not used that much, but this provides a mechanism to do what you want to do, is that you can create the book that you want and then just hand the map off to somebody. And when someone comes in, they just load the map up and then they can save it and modify it for their own purposes in order to do so. I guess we could work on trying to save maps in our database for every book. You can download it. It's probably not a bad idea, but this is not used that often. But it's a resource that you have access to. And then Brian looks like he gave some comments about activities for a specific book that was out there.
Can you show how to use comments like the identify resources maybe quickly?
Certainly. I'm close to that. This is the commons. So it's the front end that anybody and everybody can have access to, whether you're logged in or not. In this case here, I'm logged in. So it right now just does a default search through all the content on here. So right now, 2,581 books. There are lots of other books that are not compiled yet. There are lots of other content that's not in books, like the labs and other things that I talked about. But these are the ones that are compiled, which means that they're ready for published out there. You can do a search on assets. This is something that is relatively new, so Brian may not have seen it. So you can identify PowerPoint files with nutrition and say who has actually done that, grab it and move it. These are files that are stored on specific conductor pages. When you upload them, you just indicate that you want either it's publicly available only to verified instructors, or you can decide only members of the team have access to that specific file. The key point here is to, again, recognize if we want to break the golden handcuffs, we need to have a very comprehensive nature to what the LibreVerse is able to provide. And it's going to be far more than just basically textbook and homework, but you need not physical, but you need files in order to be distributed out there. And I can do a search through different projects. I didn't do any searches off of here, but I can say, okay, here are three projects that are public that I have access to that deal with nutrition that I can then fold into. The thing is, I have access to it. So we'll digress off of there. So, the question that comes up here is to identify what resources are available. And that's what the cataloging gives you the ability to do. It does a search over all our platforms. Or in this case here, only the libraries, the 16 libraries out there. So if you do a search on nutrition, it comes up with 22 books. None of them are no assets, and 27 projects that seem to be there dealing with nutrition that's out there. And I can click on these things and find out what they do. I have the ability in order to do some advanced filtering where I can decide that I only want to deal with books that are central bookshelves, so the ones that we curate. And then you can do a search, and now 9 books are in the central curation that we're able to access and make it work there. That's a pretty straightforward thing. You have filters. You can find authors. You can find campuses that are out there. subject. These are all filters that are out there. It's a very powerful infrastructure. As this gets bigger and bigger, this becomes even a greater infrastructure for you to tap into. Again, the content's all standardized to facilitate remixing, and you're able to go to it and get the access off. If you click on any of these things, like let's say this book, this is the conductor page. Sorry, this is the commons page for this book. So the conductor page is the back end requiring permission to see. This is the commons front end page or cataloging page for the book, which gives you information about, this is the table of contents list, a little bit of a summary. This is the breakdown of the licensing for the book. This is again part of our perspective on how to handle licensing, is being upfront about licensing for everything. And I can read the book online. And then here's the book that's online. We have a nice little pretty picture of Brian. I can download a PDF. I can click and buy the book. In this case here, this is $20 with shipping for black and white. And actually, I guess shipping costs another, I'm not sure, what $5 or something like that. So if I decide I want black and white in color, then it costs twice as much because the printer is providing more off of there. We are not. We have a little bit of operating costs on here, but not much. That's just to make sure it's set there. You can download a zip file of pages. You can download the print files, like individual PDFs of every single page, and you can download a common cartridge file that you can use to embed into your learning management system, and such. If you want, you can submit a peer review. If you have adopted the book, you can submit an adoption report. And this blue thing is only shown because I'm logged in, which gives me the ability to go to the conductor page for that resource. Again, because I have special powers, I can go through and see it in that way. And that's the general overview of the conductor. There are a few of these things that we're going to be removing at various points. We have announcements on the side here, which I encourage you in order to do. When you actually sign up for an account, you get put onto our listserv that you can then decide if you want to opt out for. That right now we're starting a monthly emailing to tell people what's available and what's online and how you can actually access it and what resources that we are going through. So that's the commons as an upshot, or it's going to be augmented in a variety of different ways, but this is the core component that is again available for people to tap into. Colby asked a question. You have several books in Pressbooks. What should I know to decide to move my books to LibreText? Are you asking how to harvest, or are you asking if you want me to compare and contrast Pressbooks with LibreText?
I guess I was just kind of curious on what the process was for harvesting, and also like how do I kind of take control of the version that would be within LibreText.
So you want to submit a harvesting request. So I'm going to my conductor page, and there's a harvesting request button right here. And it just fills out a few questions. If you just give us the URL of the book that you have, we will do the rest. And then when we create the project, you're going to be the owner of the project, and you can continue editing and doing the process there. The process for bringing in Pressbook can be a little varied because they don't have a single standard. Older versions of Pressbook sites seem to have a different standard than newer versions. So we are constantly having to vary the scripts in order to be able to import them. And we do that on the fly instead of just making an automatic process to bring it in. If you have a lot of H5P, for example, then we go through a secondary step in order to be able to pull that in manually to put into our studio and then couple it all into it. If you don't have any of that, it's a pretty straightforward process in order to bring it in. And then you can augment it. And so it will do simple accessibility things, but if we identify bigger accessibility issues like alt text and other things that need to be edited, we will give you notification in the conductor page for your project that's bringing in. I encourage you strongly in order to do this because our goal is to expand the corpus of questions off of there, a corpus of content. And if you have good content, then we do definitely want to bring it in for everybody to be able to capitalize on it within the LibreVerse.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Carolyn has a question about New Prairie Press. New Prairie Press, is that the K-State press?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and his books are in there as well. His are also in press books, but this particular one is one that we just published from PDF files directly into New Prairie Press, and it's a great book, and we did a lot of work on this. But I think it would really benefit from being put into LibreTexts.
Yes, let's make a harvest request right now for it. Because you have a glowing recommendation, and that is enough in order to make me excited. So I'm gonna put this into biology. So we have 9 different workflows for harvesting. So one Colby was mentioning, or I was talking about, was with press books, which is relatively easy because you're taking a website to website interface. But if it's PDFs, then that's a much more painful process because PDFs are not designed to be curated. But I have a harvesting team that basically, with some students and some advanced people that come in, and they will plow through and they know how to harvest PDFs. Depending if they're PDFs with equations, that's different than if they're PDFs without equations and a few other things like that. But this is, what's the license, CC BY?
So Delmar, I think she's saying they have Word documents. So do you want to plow through the PDFs or do you want the Word
Actually,
document?
we will ask for the Word documents. Actually, why not? Let me do this first. Is this K-State?
Yeah.
This should. Okay. This is if you really need it, which doesn't matter because I'm doing it. Do you want a yes? Okay. Okay, so now I've submitted a request. Now it goes to me. I need to log in as my other account where I see it, and then I press a button. And why don't I just do that? This is what people don't typically see. This should be logged out. Okay. Let me log in as Delmar. And so I'm going to come in as myself. I'm going to look at the harvesting request, which we're plowing through. It's grown very quickly recently. So you're going to see a long list. Don't worry about the delay of the list. That's not what I want. Harvesting homework manager, harvesting requests. Now here it is. So this is what I see, and I convert to a project. And now here's the project that's created for it. And because demo account was the one that requested it, they then have a project off of here. But for example, Carolyn, if you have an account already made.
I do.
Right there. Okay, so I just added you to this page. So now when we hand this off to a developer, the developer will come in and start to communicate back and forth, asking questions, doing stuff like that. And you'll be informed about the project, the progress, and you can even contribute to the conversation about the harvesting and various things like that. And that's basically the procedure off of here, depending upon how much time we have, how much backlog, if there's a need, if people say, I definitely need this for my course that starts in 2 weeks, please put them in and we'll prioritize them off of it. But this is the standard process that we use in order to be able to bring this together. And we encourage that for any resource. So we can go through the rest of the Prairie Learn or New Prairie Press infrastructure. If there are more books, then throw them our ways and we can harvest them. We are going through other projects in order to be able to internalize them. For example, there are many books in Maricopa Community College District that we are now starting to eye in order to internalize them for them. and other states and other campus, other districts that are out there. So,
Jennifer asked if you can harvest content from Canvas Commons.
yes. So the content from Canvas Commons, if you export it as a common cartridge, we can import the common cartridge directly. That's not too big of a deal. If the structure of the course is really complicated, then we would want to download it, and we download it into our own Canvas instance. Or actually, I don't tell anyone I use UC Davis infrastructure for doing that. And then I parse through and cut it up and then download into it. So for example, if you have questions, we need to download the question bank in a different way than if it were the textbook component off of there. But yes, we definitely will pull in Canvas. You just go through the same procedure for harvesting requests, but you just put down the URL for the Canvas Commons course, and then we just take it from there.
How long do those take, harvesting requests?
It depends on the complexity of the request, and it depends upon the backlog that we have that's out there. So our team is a bit smaller for harvesting than it used to be, but my intent is in order to scale that back up a bit. So, you know, if you tell me that you absolutely need it right now, and it's something like Pressbooks, we can bring it in so you can actually see it nearly immediately, assuming I have, or my team has, you know, 10, 15 minutes in order to take a look at. If it's something like this microbiology book, which either has the Word documents or the PDF, let's say we're PDFs, that right there can be a very slow process that would take several weeks in order to be able to put them together. So there's no, but if you have LaTeX, it's different than if you have a website, than if you have, some people even have handwritten notes that we brought in. We have multiple workflows off of there. But if you want a request to be handled by a specific date, give us as much lead time as possible and make it clear in the request that you need it by a very specific date. For typically it's for a class, but in some cases for projects for specific campuses that they want to have them resources harvested so they can then remix from it.
So I promised that you talk a little bit about administrative role. So can you do that in the couple minutes we have left, which I know is long?
Yes. So we created 7, I think, or 6 campus commons for you guys for the state. They are already down here under the campus commons, so you need to pick them. Some of them, I'm gonna go to Kansas. I'll do K-State since it's already, there we go. So here's the K-State campus commons. Here's the commons on the front end. If I come in and I have administrator rights, I emphasize this, only administrators, not the average faculty member, you have access to a control panel right here. And that's largely the difference between a faculty and administrator over here. And there are a few things that we're going to be advanced off of here, but these are the tools that you have access to as an administrator. The first one that typically people, administrators, take a look at is the campus settings, which is meant for branding. So it gives us the opportunity in order to upload things like this picture of some hall, which I don't know what it is, that was our, here we go, which is this branding right here. Now the aspect ratio here is particularly long, so many things don't fit into it. Otherwise it'd be a whole part of a bigger part of the website. But this provides a snippet that's available there. You do the same thing with the logos. That provides the logos and branding off of here. You have the ability in order to put various text off of here. This right here is a branding link, which is when you go to our, where we you can have about K-State that will go to the link that you want it to go into. Where are we here? You can assign your colors most of the time when we set these things up, the colors of the campus is already established that we're able to put them in. But if you feel that you want different color branding, you can go about doing that. And you have the ability in order to actually, this right here, I think, is only a few hours old. My development team hasn't even told me about this yet, but this has been on our request. This provides a mechanism. If you have a district with multiple subsections off of it, which Kansas, we decided to keep them all as separate instances, you can then identify who are the campuses that are part of your district. For example, if KBOR were to have its own campus commons, then we would select all the 30 or so campuses that could be part of KBOR. That's off here. Anyways, that, like I said, was just introduced here. That didn't exist a few days ago. My team hasn't even told me formally about that. That right there is the principal principal thing that people do in the beginning. Then comes a handful of other aspects. So you have the ability in order to actually, I need to check what they have done here. This gives you the ability to look at all the books. So you can add books to your campus commons. So if people creates a book, this takes a while in order to come in and say, yes, I want this 20th century contemporary literature to be enabled on my commons. It makes it do that. And if I click that, it'll be on the top with all the other books off here. So that provides a mechanism, for example, if you have books that might be in the central bookshelves or in different parts of the things, for you to come together and curate the books that you want to have on your front screen right here. And I'm not sure if these are all the books or something like that. For example, one of the steps that we may want to do is to grab in as many of the books from the New Prairie site and bring it into here. And as we bring them into our central bookshelves for everyone to be able to find and work off of, we want to make sure that the Kansas State is able to indicate that it's part of their collection that they want to be able to showcase and use out there, just like the Prairie Land Technology is doing with their own cataloging system. Collection catalog, we're going to get rid of that. You can build peer review rubrics. So you can establish a specific rubric that you want people to use for your books in order to evaluate them formally as part of the construction process or after the fact when it's available for people to find and to review. Campus settings and user manager is not really important. There are a few additional things that are going to be available on here soon, and I'll mention it now. One is that administrators are going to have it set up so any faculty member that comes in with their campus as an organization, where they indicate that they're part of their organization, then when they create a project, the administrator will be automatically added to that project. So they have an idea about who's creating projects at any one time. And you can also look at what's viewed off of there. The owner of that project does have the ability or will have the ability to kick that person off, that administrator, unless we want to be able to not allow that. And there'll be a way in order to summarize all the, not just being able to find it, but give a list of all the people who are in the fold for that specific district or campus, and provide the opportunity in order to customize and curate them, and even send out emails to the team that you want off of those. Those will be available in a handful of weeks or so, but we have requests in order to be able to pursue that for bigger campuses. Like I mentioned, Maricopa has 10 or 9 different campuses that are all organized around single district approach off of here. So, okay, Melissa asks, when can administrators expect full access for your institutions? Right now, I just need you to try to sign in to your conductor page of your institution, and then I can just give you access near immediately. But I just need to have a list of campuses and administrators. I'm not sure if Brian gave me a list like that. I think I remember seeing something.
I think Jennifer emailed it to you, if I remember correctly, so I think.
And I think that, yeah, the biggest issue we had is that we had a slight bug that I want to fix. It's not a bug, it's a feature, so that the the administrator needs to actually try to log in to their instance first, and then I'm able to give access to that. I could check to see if that's been fixed, and that has been one of the reasons why I didn't do that when I got that request. And let me check to see with my tech team to find out if they've actually addressed that issue.
So I appreciate Delmar's time, everyone that joined us today. We are a little bit over, so I want to go ahead and wrap up. So I hope everybody learned, things during the session today. Like you said, the technology changes enough that I'm learning things because I've not seen some aspects of this as before. But we're excited, in the system to be able to continue to move forward with using this technology. And so we're going to work, as a system to try to support, people in doing that as well with the help from LibreTexts. And so thank you everyone for joining, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.